back to another great episode of The Grateful Redhead. I'm Angie Ringler, your Grateful Dead loving host, and today I am joined by Becky Blake, who I must say is one of the reasons that I love the ability of the internet and connecting with people right away. I literally just a few weeks ago watched her YouTube channel, which I absolutely love. It was called, don't tell me, Lifepothesis. And it was her journey in her van life. For those that know me, you know, I'm really interested in tiny house living and van life and just kind of having that freedom to enjoy life a little bit more from, not just sitting at my desk. So when I saw her episodes, I just love what she was saying. I loved her spirit and her attitude. And I reached out to her, and guess what? Today she's on the show. So really, Becky is all about finding ways to bring sustainability in how that ties into living our ideal lives. And I thought, how perfect, because right now we're finding our way back out there. The pandemic is, lessening in a lot of ways. And it is time for us to get back to living our ideal life. So I'm so glad that Becky was able to join us today. So without further ado, I'm going to let her introduce herself. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you, Angie. I'm happy to be here. So like Angie was saying, my name is Becky. I am an environmental scientist by degree, right? So I am very interested in the science side of sustainability, which is what really interested me when Angie reached out as well. And my path has not been like a traditional path, right? I started by going to college and getting a very expensive bachelor's degree and being in a whole lot of debt because of that. And I worked in the corporate field that I got my degree in environmental consulting for 4 years and realized that that was not the kind of lifestyle that I wanted to live. And so I made a lot of changes over those 4 years to find financial sustainability for myself, where I could live a life that I enjoyed while also, getting out of debt and becoming, self-sufficient financially. And all the while I was working towards designing a lifestyle that I loved. I didn't want to be working and doing all these things that look successful to everyone else, or were maybe fulfilling the dreams that my parents had for me, or looked great towards, societal expectations. I really wanted to fulfill what I felt like was my actual calling and work within my passions and be able to explore different interests that I had, one of which was travel. So that's kind of the beginning of my story, and there's more details in the middle we can talk about. But most recently, that has kind of manifested as I took a year off from work. We called it a mini retirement, and my partner and I traveled the United States in a campervan that we converted. We converted an old Sprinter cargo van, and took a year just to see all of the national parks and all the states that we possibly could. And really figure out what we wanted the next step in our lives to look like, whether that was going back to work after we took the time off, or building something that was continued to be location independent. So that's where I am now. We're, documenting what our van build journey was like, and our travels on YouTube at Lifepothesis, and as well as a blog. And I am now building my second business as a freelance writer now, so that I can be completely location independent and continue to travel and live a lifestyle that is what I would consider my ideal freedom lifestyle.
I love that term, location independent. I can't say I've heard that before, but it's exactly what it sounds like, right? We're not really dependent on living in one place. And there's so much to see in the world that I feel like a lot of times we are kind of in that grind of, okay, you go to school, you're supposed to go out and get a job and work for a while, and then get a chance to enjoy those things. We need to enjoy those things when we're young and we're healthy and we're able to get out there and do that.
Totally.
So, really, I know that you're geared towards the millennials. I know that you can't tell by my voice or looking at me, but I am not in that millennial section anymore. So I thought it would be interesting to get the perspective of what it's like to be a millennial today, especially trying to, work in conjunction with the planet. I mean, I care about the planet because I have to live here in the future as well. But quite honestly, your future is even longer on this planet. And I'm wondering what are important to millennials today when you talk about sustainability?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting to me about that question is actually how I would answer that has changed significantly in the last 5 years. And that's because when I was getting my degree in environmental science, we were talking about climate change and the kind of disastrous impacts that we're going to see from climate change as a 50 plus year out kind of scenario. And that's when I was studying from 2011 to 2015. Now, it's 2021, and that is like less than 5 years after I graduated, where like our timeline has shrunk now with the negative impacts of climate change are going to severely impact the lives of, not only millennials, but people who may have thought that they weren't even going to live to see climate change impacts, right? And the severity and the frequency of negative events connected to that is going to be larger than we had initially anticipated. So with that in mind, I think that what my perspective, and this is like a really complex question of like how we can live sustainably now, given the challenges that we're facing. But there's multiple parts to it. For sure, I think personal action is one of the most empowering things that we can do. We can lower our own carbon footprint. We can make sure that we are living in alignment with sustainability values, like trying to reduce the amount of waste that we create, trying to conserve resources such as electricity and water, and using things like maybe alternative energies. So what I really loved about van life is that's something that we were able to do by default. I mean, we were in an off-grid camper van that was run completely on solar energy. We had, 400 watts of solar on the roof. We had our own battery bank. We only carried 21 gallons of fresh water, and that lasted us for a week for 2 people. So the amount of like resources that we consumed was naturally constrained by our lifestyle. Right. And I think that even if you're not living in a van or living alternatively, you can make choices in your lifestyle that naturally constrain how many resources you can use, like living in a smaller place or, investing in some sort of alternative energy, such as solar, so that you can be less dependent on, coal-fired electricity, for example.
Now, when you're on the
that's
road,
like the personal side.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when you were on the road, did you, engage these conversations with other millennials, and were they having the same kind of concerns that it is a concern about finite resources, or was it a very broad feeling about the planet?
I saw the gamut of kind of feelings about this. I mean, I definitely think that for millennials, climate change is very poignant because we've been old enough to see a large change in our adult lives, right? So maybe the younger generations from us, this has been the way that their planet and their climate has been their whole lives. So there hasn't been such a large swing, such a large shift. And so some millennials are very concerned. I know people who composted in their vans, which we attempted, and it was very logistically challenging. Yeah. There's an app called Share Waste, I believe, where you can actually basically hook up with people who have compost systems around the country, and you'll message them and say, hey, I have compost to donate to your compost pile. And they'll say what you can and can't have in your compost to give to them. And then you drop it off. You collect your waste and then you drop it off.
You mean
we found that
I could register on this app because we compost in our backyard. So I could put that up there. And if somebody was camping in our area in Central Florida, they could call me up and just come and drop. That's fantastic.
100%. Yeah.
This is why I love doing this.
Definitely, it's a great way for people in different places and different types of lifestyles to interface, that we can have community solutions to these problems, right? If I live in a van, I might be conserving a ton of water, but I have no option for my waste for the most part besides landfill or recycling. And in a lot of cases, I mean, we carried around a ton of recycling in certain areas of the United States because recycling was very hard to find. So I know people who carry a significant amount of recycling. I also knew people who said, well, it's too much. It's too inconvenient. We're going to have to, landfill some of the waste that could be recycled potentially, just kind of circumstantially because of the situation that they were in.
And even when you're not
there
in
are other
van
people.
life, like I was just thinking, when you're not in van life, we just traveled and stayed at Airbnbs this summer. So there was only 2 Airbnbs that we stayed at that actually allowed us to compost on site. At the other places, we didn't have any other options. And I wish I would have known about what's it called? Share compost?
I think it's called share waste.
Share waste. Okay.
Is what the app is called. Yeah.
Even if you don't compost at home, I mean, you might have somebody right down your street that's doing this that would open that up to you. That's really interesting. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're having my brain think of all these different things. So appreciate it.
Of course. And I thought it was interesting. That's an interface between, urban dwellers and their suburban or, rural counterparts in the same county, for example. You could collect, if you're living in a high-rise apartment, you can still collect your waste that can be composted and bring that to someone who has that capability, has the space, has the, ability to turn it and to add whatever, additives that it needs. Even if you can't physically do it yourself, you can still divert that waste from the landfill.
Do you notice that because, obviously you're not sitting in a van right now, you're back at your home base. Is that correct?
Yes.
So do you notice that when you got back home, like for instance, water, like I feel like when you're in the van and you have this limited supply of water, you're super conscious of what like a gallon of water really is. To where at home, we turn on the faucet, we really don't have that concept of how much water are we going through. Has it really, changed when you got home to how you're utilizing the water?
Yeah, I would say it is. I think, in one sense, a lot of what has changed is just perception, right? Humans assign value to things that are things are more valuable to humans when they're more scarce. So when you only have access to 20 gallons of water for 2 people, so say that's 10 gallons of water per person per week, that is a very valuable resource for you. Compared to being in a home where I could probably turn on my tap right now, let it run for probably 4 or 5 minutes and use 10 gallons of water. That's a very different value scenario where maybe I think, oh, I'll just see that on my bill at the end of the month. In some places, water is very inexpensive, so it's not even valued like that. So yeah, the mental shift is really interesting. But something that I like to talk about in, sustainability in terms of lifestyle and finances is that the more effort it takes to do or not do something, the less likely you are to do it, right? So in order to, use less water, we were, like I said, practically constrained because we had a foot pump. We didn't have an electric tap. I couldn't open the tap and then have the water come out. I had to physically press down every time I wanted water to come out of my sink, which was great. In a home, you could install a low flow faucet or a low flow shower head to make it so that your shower literally cannot pump out as much water as it could before with no effort after that initial install on your part. The more that you can set and forget things, the easier it is to implement those conserving actions into your lifestyle. So for us, we found that since we don't have those constraints in place, it is you definitely value the water more. You're like, wow, how great it is to have a hot shower whenever I want, or to be able to soak this whole pan completely full of water instead of like putting a little bit in it and then rubbing it around and then waiting and then rubbing it around again, But at the same time, it's easy to fall back into habits where something is convenient. And so you're not necessarily going to make the extra effort to conserve if there's not already a system in place to help you do that, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And how is what you're doing and what you're teaching people to do to in order to live the lifestyle that they want, right? And you have the sustainability aspect in saying, look, if you do these certain things, you'll be able to live more of the lifestyle that you want. Give me a little idea of what that looks like and how people can implement those things, regardless of your age, right? This is all about living your best life at any age.
Totally. So if I understand your question right, it's basically like how sustainability factors into creating that ideal lifestyle. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So again, when I talk about sustainability, I'm often referring to not only environmental sustainability, but also financial sustainability. If you think about it, the really great thing about sustainability, in my opinion, is that when you are saving money, you're almost always helping save the planet, right? So you are saving money by not using as much water. That's also good for the environment, right? If you're saving money by maybe consuming less fast fashion or something, that's going to be good for the environment. You're creating less waste. You're requiring, the production of less plastic and packaging and shipment of goods and things like that. So when it comes to creating an ideal lifestyle, then what I like to tell people is everything is about values. So you have to decide what you value. And when I say what you value, I mean only the things that matter to you, not the things that matter to your parents, not the things that matter to your, friend group, not the things that matter to society, right? Yeah, exactly. That matter to Pinterest or Instagram or the influencers that you follow. If you were to write down a list of things that you truly care about, and then you were to write down a list of things that you either participate in or you purchase or you think about a lot that you don't actually care that much about personally, and you separate those items and you say, okay, this is a list of things that I want to focus more on. And this is a list of things that I want to cut out of my life. Because design is not only creation, right? It's you're subtracting the things that are unimportant so that you can have more time and more money and more space for the things that are actually important to you. So once you figure out that value system, right, you can say, I really value the environment. So I'm going to spend a little bit more money on making sure that the products that I do purchase are sustainable. That, they're packaged in less wasteful packaging, or they're all compostable, right?
Yes.
And then you're going to say, well,
speaking my language, speaking my language.
Right. Because your waste-free products are just like that, right? There's probably a little bit more cost involved than buying. If I was to buy a all-natural sponge that's completely compostable and doesn't have plastic components in it, that's going to cost me more than going to Walmart and getting a 5-pack of sponges that are made entirely of plastic. But if my value system says that it's more valuable to me to spend a little bit more money on something that is better for the environment, and, not as valuable for me to spend money in other areas that don't really matter to me, like, for example, going to the movies, right? I'm going to say, okay, I can cut out going to the movies. Maybe I'll have a Netflix subscription instead or something like that. You can reallocate those resources, whether that's your time, your money, your attention, towards that area that you value, instead of towards those things that maybe you were doing by default, maybe you were doing because you felt expected to do them. Maybe you felt like that was just what adults do. I think that's something a lot of millennials are still dealing with. Like, all right, well, adults are supposed to buy a house and get a new car and have such and such number of kids. And a lot of millennials that I know, especially younger millennials, I'm on the younger side. I'm not quite yet 30 years old. So we are seeing, well, it's very hard to afford a house right now. Buying a new car is out of my price range, right? Maybe having kids is not something that I want to do. And so we're grappling with this perception of what adulthood is, right? And those things that adults are supposed to do. And having to face up with whether or not those are our actual values and whether or not those are things that we want to pursue. And if we do want them, I'm not saying that those are things that are bad or things that nobody wants.
Right.
It certainly is. But if it's something that we want, then we have to make that the priority. And if it's not, then we have to make something else a priority. So for me, a house is not a priority. I'd really rather have a van, right? I'd rather have the location independence we were talking about earlier. So it's all about values. My value system is not going to look the same as your value system, is not going to look the same as someone else's value system. But that's how you can incorporate those sustainable actions, environmentally, financially, and personally into your life, to create that ideal life that you want, instead of just, I call it living by design instead of living by default.
I like that. That's a really good saying. And I feel like what you're saying is that the values that a lot of us have, they might not even have come from us. They could have been ingrained since we were little from our family or the environment that we live in or the culture that we come from. And therefore, it almost makes it hard to sit down and say, what are my values, right? Because you probably know what the values are in your life, but what is really valuable to you as an individual. So are there any tricks, like if you're going to sit down with like I'm assuming that you sit down and you have like clients that you help guide into this more of designed lifestyle. How do they begin even shedding some of those beliefs that have been maybe pushed onto them, through their life, and they don't even realize that they're not something that they want to carry on?
So one of the things that I would say is when we start to figure out what we want our lives to look like, it feels very overwhelming, right? And we're also tempted to say, oh, that's too ridiculous. That's unrealistic for me. We tend to self-edit. So I like the brain dump, whatever you want to call it. I call it the brain dump, where you say, if I could have anything I wanted, like I tell people, imagine that you have $100 million, right? Because there's nothing that you can't buy with that amount of money.
Right.
What would you do? What would you want to have? What would a day in your ideal life look like? Now, some of those things that you're going to write down when you think about that question are not going to be anything that you can buy with money, right? It might be, that I sleep in and I don't wake up with an alarm, and I get up and I, cuddle my dog, right? Those aren't things that you need $100 million for. You could probably do that right now if you wanted. But I do feel like as we have to take away those limits, those self-imposed limits where we self-edit and we say, well, I really want to write that I want a private jet, right? But I don't have the money for a private jet, so I'm not going to write that down. Or I really want to write that I want to backpack through Asia for a year and a half, but there's no way I could afford that. So I'm not going to write it down. But you basically think, okay, like in my wildest dreams, what are these things that I would do? And then you're going to start finding themes. So I would say for most people, they'll see that there's going to be several things that they say that they want that kind of fall into a similar category. Like for me, that was travel. It was like, if I had $100 million to spend on things, 3/4 of the things I would spend it on are experiences, are like going and doing something somewhere in the world, right? So that was something that became a core value to me, right? That I realized, okay, I really, really value travel. How can I then incorporate that into my lifestyle now? So you kind of have to work from like this really big vision, right? You dial it in to see, okay, what are the pillars of this vision? For a lot of people, one of the pillars is going to be relationships. And you don't need any money to have good relationships, right? So another pillar might be hobbies, or something that gives you purpose, like volunteering or creating something or doing something like travel. Another thing might be work, more contribution related things. So what kind of work are you going to do in the world? What do you want to do in your career? If you could have any career you wanted, what would it be? It doesn't have to be the career that you have. It doesn't have to be based on the degree that you have. It doesn't have to be 9 to 5. It doesn't have to be, every year until you're 65, right? You can start to think outside the box. What does work look like for me, which is a huge component of a lot of people's lives. And it's very important to the ideal lifestyle because in the end, you are going to need some money to do what you want to do, right? It doesn't have to be as much money as you're currently making. It doesn't have to be half the amount of money that you're currently making, because if you decide that half the things that you're doing, that you're spending money on, don't actually matter to you, that you don't want to pay rent in a city, and instead you want to live in a van and that costs half as much, you can change the amount of money that you're making to scale with how your expenses have changed. So maybe you were spending $5,000 a month and now you only have to spend $2,500 a month. You could work half as much. You could take a lower stress job that pays less. You could save money from the job that you're working that makes more, and then leave your job and use those savings to travel for a period of time. You know, there's like a lot of different ways to implement these ideas that you have, but you do have to kind of look at how those pieces of what you want fit into that value system and what your priorities are to be able to decide the pathway to get there.
Yeah. So you really got to build it down. Like you said, you're going to start with this gigantic picture and really kind of hone it down into like these little buckets, or, you know, and then figure them out from there. And, I feel like it's the thing where they say people will spend, 2 weeks planning a vacation and they'll spend 2 days planning their finances. It's this, we don't always put that kind of time and energy in the places that could give us the biggest impact. So what you said really made sense. And I hope that, I feel like people listening would definitely find value into that and really kind of honing in where their values are. And it's going to change through life. This is what you're sharing
Absolutely.
today is not something you sit down and you do one time. This is definitely maybe even every year. Every year I like to sit down at the end of the year, kind of think about what happened over my year, what felt good, what didn't, and make my goals for the next year. And part of that should be more of looking at my values, not just of the activities, but what are my values that I'm looking forward to. So yeah, that was really insightful what you shared. I appreciate that. So I
Absolutely.
do have to ask because I'm so intrigued by van life, I have to ask, what was the hardest part for you to go from to living in a van for a year? What was the hardest part, you think?
I think what's really different about van life is that there's very little structure or routine. In particular, if you're not working while you're traveling full time. So my boyfriend and I both took a year off from our careers to travel full time. And without the structure of a 9 to 5, and prior to that, I had actually left my job to be self-employed, but it was still different from having the structure of work, even if it was self-imposed work, right? We could wake up whenever we wanted. We could drive whenever or wherever we wanted. We could be 3 states away the next day if we didn't like where we were. So on one hand, freedom is amazing. And that's one of my core values is freedom. That's why I like location independence and why I, am pursuing financial independence, is because freedom is so important to me. At the same time, I realized that having a routine is actually a form of freedom, right? Because you have the freedom from constant decision making. When you don't know where you're going or where you're going to sleep or what you're going to do, you are constantly making decisions that change at every moment, right? So it was finding balance. I guess my overarching answer to that question is finding balance. You can have all work and it's no fun, and you can have all play and it gets challenging. It can sound very trite to say, well, yeah, exactly. It can say, saying, oh man, traveling is a lot of work, or ends up being, demanding in its own right. Sounds really hard to hear if you're working all the time, but it does become your full-time job to figure out where you're getting water and where you're getting food and where you're going to sleep, and where you're going to get gas, and if you're going to be safe where you're sleeping, and if you're going to need to buy tickets to get into the national park that you're going to the next day. And so the logistics of life never go away. They're just applied to different projects. And this project was travel, right? Versus creating something or selling something or, working for someone else. So balance was something that we had to find again. Shifting our lifestyle so significantly led us to feel a little bit off balance. We were going too far into the direction where there was absolutely no structure. And we had to bring ourselves back where we had to get into a routine, get into a flow again, learn how life looked in this new phase. And it was amazing.
How long did that take till you kind of went from, woohoo, we're on the road to, whoa, I'm feeling a little unbalanced, till you kind of felt that evenness again?
Yeah, I would say the first month or so was very challenging in terms of getting used to how things worked, right? We were living in an entirely different way. There were mechanical challenges and logistical issues with living in a van that are completely different than living in a house. Once we passed that first month, and not that it wasn't also an amazing honeymoon period, we were probably, go, traveling, moving around. Wow, this is so great for 4 months, maybe 5 months. And then we kind of got hit by the feeling that it was too much, right? It was too much travel. It was too much movement. It was just a constant onslaught of logistical decisions that needed to be made. And also for me, I started feeling the draw of work again. I was incredibly burned out I was burned out in my corporate career. And so I left my job in early 2020 to work for myself. And then, of course, we had some very challenging times in 2020 that it led to a whole different type of burnout, right? So it took me, and then working on the van was a 4-month period of 12-hour days every day, no breaks for 4 months. So it was a lot all at once. And I needed 6 months to recover from that and just, to relax and to be able to have the freedom to sleep in and, get my body healthy again and, clear my mind and be able to enjoy things. Right. So after that, I started feeling the pull of work again. I am a very productivity oriented person, and it doesn't necessarily have to be work that's making money, but I want to be creating things. I want to be using, my gifts for other people as well. I feel like a lot of the traveling while we were creating relationships and we were building a community, I wasn't doing things for other people because we were alone so much. We were moving so frequently.
Oh, right.
And so I wanted to be able to have that feeling of contribution, right? Have that feeling of purpose and creation again. So that's when about 6 months in.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
To say about 6 months in, I started feeling that pull towards work, and I started thinking about how I was going to reinvent my work again. Yeah, to try to get back that balance again. I remember in one of your videos, you made the cute comment about how I think it was you or both of you were really spreadsheet people, and everything on the van build was on the spreadsheet. You could literally just hand somebody a spreadsheet and be this is exactly how you would have to build a van. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have not been to their channel yet, Lifepothesis, go and look at their van. It is so cute. You guys did an amazing job on it. It looks like the perfect hotel room to travel around the United States. So job well done on your part and your partner's part. Thank you.
So I do want to also inquire with you, what, when you're at home or when you're on the road, maybe there's some more kind of low waste things that you do that transferred well between both, that you didn't have to transition. I know we talked about the compost and where it was a little bit difficult, but were there things that you naturally took to the road and have brought back home that were pretty seamless and still giving you that ability to reduce some waste in your life?
Yeah, so I think a lot of reusables translate super well to things like backpacking and traveling, and actually like saving space. It's kind of one of those things where you have to prioritize what you're going to use your space for. Are you going to use your space to store a bunch of trash, which is disposables, or are you going to use your space to store reusable items? Like for us, we carried glass Pyrex containers for leftovers. We use a lot of towels instead of paper towels when we could. And so those would just go into our laundry basket when we were done with them. And we would wash them with our clothes at the laundromat. Even like reusable feminine hygiene products. People don't love to talk about that, but frankly, I mean, I've been using them for like 10 years. And as a traveler, it is so much easier to have something reusable, to have a cloth pad or to have a menstrual cup, than it is to have to carry around a whole, box of like, tampons or something.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's something, I mean, I've been doing that for, like I said, about at least 10 years. A lot of my sustainability, kind of personal action came along in college for me when I was out of the house and I could do what I wanted. I could start using reusables. I could make all these changes. Something that I've carried with me is I actually don't use shampoo or conditioner. I do what's called the no shampoo or the no poo method.
Yeah. No poo, yeah.
So I wash my hair with baking soda solution and apple cider vinegar. And that's something that has been like seamlessly easy to transition. Often is easier to find like apple cider vinegar at a grocery store than it would be to find a particular brand of shampoo or something in a store if I need something when I'm traveling. So
and way less water. I mean, just to rinse it, use it, that whole process is using way less water too. That's really fantastic.
Way less water. Biodegradable soap. When you're in a van, you have to use biodegradable soap if you're going to be washing anything outside, right? If you want to be disposing of that wash water on the ground, you really should be. I mean, it's the responsible way to kind of leave no trace. And so I've been using Dr. Bronner's soap again for like 10 years, and we use it in our house, for washing dishes. We use it for washing hands. We use it for washing, our bodies. And basically the only thing I don't think we've used it for yet is laundry. But I'm working on Austin and gonna try to get him to try it. Or something like soap nuts is the other thing that I think we're gonna give a try soon, now that we're back into a place where we have our own laundry facilities.
Well, you let me know. I'm happy to send you some Tangy laundry concentrate. If you want to try it, it's got soap nuts in it, and you have no plastic jug. So I'll hook you up. It's all who you know.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. And we love not having plastic packaged things.
Yeah.
Like I said, you either carry your reusables or you carry the waste that comes from disposables. And for me, it's always better to have something that I can pack away. It's a durable item that I know I can continue to use. Like I've said, I've owned most of my reusables for 10 years now. And nothing is to the point where it needs to be replaced anytime soon. So I really think that all of those kinds of things translate very well and are transitions that you'd have to make in a lot of alternative living situations anyway to be kind of more self-sufficient, if you want to think of it that way. You take fewer trips to the store and be able to take care of what you need to take care of without relying on getting maybe like Amazon deliveries and things like that, because you're not always going to be in range of society. You're not going to be able to go to a warehouse store,
click it, buy it, and have it sent to your doorstep when your doorstep is traveling all around the United States.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cool. A lot of those sustainability actions really translated super well.
I love it. So do you have any plans to go back out in the van? Do you guys still own the van?
Yes. Yeah. We toyed with the idea of selling it and actually listed it for sale. Okay. And we have decided that we're going to keep it. Basically,
that's great.
We're very attached to it. We poured our hearts and souls into building it. It was our home for a year, and we thought that we were going to sell it so that we could build another van, and kind of do an upgrade. And at this point, we realized like we really can just upgrade what we have. It's kind of like working with what we have. We found that it's probably going to be challenging for us to get a new van to build out anyway. So we're going to hang on to this one. Now, my boyfriend's a pilot, so we're going to be like moving to be stationed near where his airport is. And his schedule will allow us to take like weekend trips, and he can kind of schedule his days on and his days off so that we can do shorter term travel now. And so that's the plan for the van going forwards.
That'll be really nice. Now, did I read somewhere that you guys are also helping people if they want to do a van build? You have some designs or some ideas or a course or something?
We right now we offer consultations. So when people need help with their van build, they can reach out to us. I mean, we answer lots of questions for free. If you want to just message us on Instagram at Lifehypothesis, we would be happy to help you out if you have any kind of minor questions. But for people who have big kind of design blocks, if you're coming up against something in your design that you're not sure what to do, Austin is an absolute whiz with 3D modeling software. And so we help people visualize their designs as well as design their electrical systems, because that's a bit of a challenge for a lot of people. And he's a mechanical engineer who's worked in electrical engineering. So we like to share that expertise with the community as well. And we will be hopefully publishing some building diagrams as well in the future of our van build, as well as maybe some of my spreadsheets for the, all the products that we needed to buy and the lumber and the timeline and everything like that. But we have a ton of free resources on our website at Lifehypothesis. So it's kind of like the word hypothesis, lifehypothesis.com. You can find plenty of free resources about how we built our van on an $8,000 budget, and how we managed to get that build timeframe down to 4 months. That's all on the website.
Awesome. I think those are fantastic resources. The fact that you offer so many of them for free, and the fact that you do have this kind of, you guys are tapped into having his expertise and your expertise to, really be able to answer people's questions confidently. So just to kind of wrap up our talk today, I do want to ask you some fun questions, which are like, I'm a big music junkie. So I want to know, who's your favorite band?
So this might sound funny, but my favorite band is the Eagles. I listen to a lot of classic rock. I love it. Yeah, I'm kind of someone who doesn't really have my finger on the pulse of any modern music or pop music that's coming out. So oftentimes someone will say, "Oh, have you heard this new song? It's called whatever." And I'm like, to be honest, no, I probably haven't heard it. But all of my favorite songs are songs I listened to growing up. And it was because that was all the music from my parents when they were growing up. So yeah, I love the Eagles. I like a lot of classic rock bands.
Have you seen them live in concert?
Not yet. We were hoping to start going to concerts in 2020.
Great. Yes.
Yeah. And so now we're looking.
Tickets I haven't been able to use. They were pushed off from 2020 to 2021. And now the shows are pushed off to 2022. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure the band has spent that money I paid on the tickets like 10 times over again. I don't know how they're all going to afford to do that. So it's important that we support live music whenever we can, definitely.
For sure.
Well, very cool. I love the Eagles too, so I love that answer. Let me ask you too. So what act of kindness have you done lately?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, helping people move, I guess. I don't know if that's an act of kindness, but
huge act of kindness, by the way, because nobody really wants to do that.
Right. Well, and it's one of those things where, like, we have a big van, so we offer to help people move all the time.
Yes.
But
a friend of a fan is a friend indeed.
Yeah, not that we've been as, definitely a U-Haul van is the way to go if you're moving like big furniture and stuff. But I just think it's nice to help people when they need it, because it's something that can be so much easier with a bunch of hands, and it doesn't take that much effort, I think, like for the individuals, but having a group moving makes it a lot easier.
Good point. Nice job, girl. I appreciate you being here today. Let people know where they can find you. I know you shared the website a moment ago, but just reiterate that and any place else that they can find out what you guys are doing.
Sure. So like I said, our van life website is lifepothesis.com. And then if you're looking more for information on financial sustainability and figuring out how to create your ideal lifestyle, I write about that at 20free.co. So that's the word 20, free.co. And then you can find us, of course, on Instagram and on YouTube at Lifepothesis. If you like podcasts, I have a podcast called Find Your Freedom Podcast, which kind of covers the financial independence, location independence, lifestyle design aspects of what we were talking about today.
Awesome. Becky, I can't thank you enough really for making time and being here. It's so cool that just to think weeks ago, I was admiring what you guys were doing, traveling across the country. And here you are in my office today, and I'm getting a chance to chat with you. So thank you so much. And for those of you that are listening and you know somebody really cool like Becky who's out there trying to help people doing the right thing, I want to get a chance to talk to them too. So reach out, let me know who they are so I can connect with them and get them on my show. And wherever you guys are listening to podcasts, please subscribe. We're trying to put out a new podcast every week. And until we all meet again, please be kind to each other and love one another. Peace out. So before you go today, I want to thank you for listening to this episode. I've built a business on formulating natural household cleaning and body products without plastic bottles or plastic packaging. So if you'd like to give them a try, head on over to wastefreeproducts.com and use promo code GratefulRedhead for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for listening.